The words hit me like a freight train across our mahogany dining table. 23 people watching, 23 witnesses to my public execution. If you want to leave, go ahead. In a few weeks, you'll come crawling back. Zoya Ardell, my wife of 8 years, had just delivered her ultimatum with the precision of a courtroom attorney and the cruelty of a playground bully. Her emerald eyes sparkled with malicious confidence as she surveyed our dinner guests, her parents, her law firm colleagues, our neighbors, and yes, even her best friend Mira sitting right there at the far end. I felt every eye in the room shift to me. The silence stretched like a taut wire about to snap. Someone's fork clinked against their plate. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked with mechanical indifference. My name is Trent Ardell. I'm 42 years old, and I run a construction business that employs 37 people. I've built half the custom homes in this Maine coastal town over the past decade. I served 2 tours in Afghanistan as a combat engineer before coming home to build something meaningful with my hands and my head. But right now, sitting at the head of my own dinner table, I felt smaller than I had since basic training. The argument had started innocently enough. Zoya had been texting during dinner again, that familiar smirk playing across her lips as she typed responses to someone who clearly wasn't in this room. When I asked her to put the phone away, politely, quietly, she'd laughed. "It's just Tony," she'd said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He's having issues with his divorce attorney, Tony Kozlov, her ex-boyfriend from law school, the silver-tongued real estate developer who'd been sniffing around my wife for months under the guise of professional networking. The same Tony who'd been calling her at odd hours, sending flowers to her office, and somehow always ending up at the same restaurants where we ate. I'd given her an ultimatum 3 days ago: cut contact with Tony completely, or we were done. She'd laughed then too. Now, with 23 pairs of eyes watching, she was making her choice crystal clear. "Trent gets so jealous," she continued, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she wanted to make someone feel small. "He thinks every man I talk to is trying to steal me away. It's honestly embarrassing." Her mother, Elena, nodded sympathetically. Her father, Victor, studied his wine glass with the intensity of a man who'd perfected the art of avoiding family drama. The lawyers from her firm exchanged glances that spoke volumes about office gossip to come. I could have argued, could have pointed out the late-night phone calls, the secret lunches, the way she lit up whenever Tony's name appeared on her screen, could have mentioned finding hotel receipts in her purse, or how she'd started working late every night since Tony's divorce proceedings began. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I stood up. The chair scraped against the hardwood floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the suddenly quiet room. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my wedding ring, the simple gold band I'd worn for 8 years, and placed it carefully next to my dinner plate. The silence that followed was absolute. Zoya's confident smirk faltered for just a moment, but she recovered quickly. "Oh, come on, Trent. Don't be so dramatic. Sit down and finish your dinner." I didn't sit down. I didn't say a word. I simply turned and walked toward the front door, my footsteps the only sound in the house. Behind me, I heard Zoya's nervous laugh. "He'll be back before dessert. He always comes back." The front door closed behind me with a soft click. The October air was crisp against my face as I stood on the porch of the house I'd built with my own hands. Every beam, every joint, every carefully planned detail, I'd designed it all for the life I thought we were building together. My truck sat in the driveway, a reliable Ford F-150 that had never let me down, unlike some people in my life. I was halfway to the driver's side when I heard footsteps behind me. "Trent!" I turned to find Mira Geller hurrying across the driveway, her heels clicking against the asphalt. Zoya's best friend since college, the one person my wife trusted with everything. Mira was 34, sharp as a tack, and worked as a marketing director for a tech company in Portland. She'd been at our wedding, our anniversary parties, every major milestone of our marriage. "That was brave," she said, slightly out of breath. "That was stupid," I replied. I just gave up the best thing in my life for pride. Mira stepped closer, her expression serious in a way I'd rarely seen. Trent, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you want to know the truth about your wife? The question hung in the air between us like smoke. Part of me wanted to say no, to get in my truck and drive away from whatever revelation was coming. But a bigger part, the part that had been questioning everything for months, needed to hear it. What truth? Mira glanced back at the house, where warm light spilled from the dining room windows. Not here. Too many ears. Meet me at the Dunkin' on Route 1 in an hour. Come alone. She started to walk away, then turned back. Trent? You're not the one who should be crawling back. Trust me on that. An hour later, I sat in a booth at the nearly empty Dunkin' Donuts, nursing a coffee that had gone lukewarm while I waited. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and a teenager with purple hair mopped the floor with the mechanical efficiency of someone counting down minutes until closing time. Mira arrived exactly on time, carrying a large manila envelope that she set carefully on the table between us. Before I show you this, she said, I need you to understand something. Zoya and I have been friends for 12 years. I was her maid of honor. I've kept her secrets, covered for her, supported her through everything. She paused, her fingers drumming against the envelope. But what she's doing to you isn't just cheating, Trent. It's calculated cruelty, and I can't watch it anymore. What's in the envelope, Mira? Proof. Screenshots of text messages between Zoya and Tony going back 6 months. Hotel receipts she asked me to hold so you wouldn't find them. Voice recordings of conversations where she laughs about how naive you are. Bank records showing money transfers to pay for their trips. My stomach dropped. Voice recordings? She sent them to me as voice messages, thinking they'd disappear. I saved them. Mira's expression was grim. In one of them, she talks about how she's going to string you along until Tony's divorce is final, then leave you for him. She calls you her safety net. The teenager with purple hair had moved closer, pretending to clean tables while obviously eavesdropping. Mira noticed and lowered her voice. There's more. She's been telling people at her firm that you're controlling and jealous, setting up a narrative in case you try to expose her, making you look like the problem. I stared at the envelope, afraid to touch it. Why are you telling me this? She's your best friend. Because you're a good man, and you deserve better. Because I've watched her destroy every relationship she's ever had, and I'm tired of being her accomplice. Mira pushed the envelope across the table. And because she made one mistake. What mistake? She told me her plan for tonight. She knew you'd give her an ultimatum eventually, so she planned that whole scene. The public humiliation, the confident dismissal, making you look weak in front of everyone you know. She wanted to break you down so completely that you'd never challenge her again. The fluorescent light buzzed louder, or maybe it just seemed that way in the silence that followed. She underestimated you, Mira continued. She thought you'd sit there and take it like you always do. When you walked out, she panicked. She's been texting me nonstop since you left, asking if I've seen you, demanding I help her figure out how to spin this. I picked up the envelope. It was heavier than I'd expected. What do you want in return for this? Mira's smile was sharp as a blade. I want you to make her pay for what she's done, not just to you, but to everyone she's hurt over the years. I want her to understand what it feels like to lose everything because of her own choices. And if I say no, then you go home, apologize for walking out, and spend the rest of your marriage wondering when the other shoe will drop. Because it will drop, Trent. Maybe not today, maybe not next month, but eventually. And when it does, you'll have even less than you do right now. I opened the envelope and pulled out the first document. It was a screenshot of a text conversation between Zoya and Tony, dated just 3 days ago. Zoya: he gave me an ultimatum today. So predictable. Tony: what did you tell him? Zoya: Nothing yet, but I'm going to handle it at the dinner party Friday. Public pressure, make him look like a jealous fool in front of everyone. After that, he'll be too embarrassed to bring it up again. Tony, and if he doesn't back down? Zoya, then I'll let him leave and come crawling back in a few weeks. Men like Trent always do. They don't have the spine for anything else. I read the messages twice, then looked up at Mira. How many more are there? 47 screenshots, 12 voice messages, hotel receipts from 6 different trips, bank records showing she's been using your joint account to pay for dinners with him while telling you she's working late. The weight of betrayal settled in my chest like a stone. But underneath it, something else was growing, something harder and colder. What exactly are you proposing, Mira? I'm proposing we give Zoya exactly what she deserves. Complete and total consequences for her choices. No mercy, no second chances, no opportunity to manipulate her way out of it. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I'm proposing we destroy her, Trent. Systematically, thoroughly, and permanently. Are you interested? I looked down at the evidence in my hands, then back at Mira's expectant face. Outside, cars passed on Route 1, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Normal people going about their normal lives, unaware that mine was about to change forever. Yes, I said. I'm very interested. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, the one room in the house that was purely mine, and went through every piece of evidence Mira had given me. By dawn, I had a complete picture of my wife's betrayal, and it was worse than I'd imagined. The text messages revealed a relationship that had been going on for 8 months, not 6. They'd been intimate at least a dozen times, always at hotels paid for with money from our joint account. Zoya had told Tony details about our private life, our finances, even our attempts to have children, intimate struggles she'd turned into entertainment for her lover. But the voice messages were the worst part. In one, recorded just 2 weeks ago, Zoya laughed as she described how I'd bought her flowers for our anniversary. He's trying so hard to be romantic, she'd said. It's almost sad, like watching a dog perform tricks for treats he's never going to get. In another, she discussed their future plans. Tony's divorce would be final in 6 weeks. They'd already looked at condos in Portland where they could live together. She'd calculated exactly how much she could take from our joint assets before filing for divorce. The construction business is worth at least $2 million, she'd told Tony. Half of that is mine, plus the house, plus alimony. Trent's too nice to fight dirty in court. I'll walk away with enough to start over anywhere I want. I listened to that message 3 times, my anger crystallizing into something harder and more focused with each repetition. At 7 a.m., I called my foreman, Jake Morrison, and told him I'd be taking a few days off. Jake had worked for me for 6 years and knew better than to ask questions when I used that particular tone of voice. At 8 a.m., I drove to the office of Patricia Hendricks, the best divorce attorney in 3 counties. I'd built her house 4 years ago, and she owed me a favor. Patricia was a woman in her 50s who'd earned her reputation by being absolutely ruthless when the situation called for it. She listened to my story without interruption, reviewed the evidence Mira had provided, and gave me her professional assessment. This is a slam dunk, she said. Adultery, financial fraud, emotional abuse documented in her own words. In Maine, this kind of evidence can affect everything from property division to alimony. She won't get half of anything. How long will it take? With evidence this clear, 6 weeks for an uncontested divorce. If she fights it, maybe 3 months. But Trent, based on what I'm seeing here, I don't think she'll fight. She'll be too busy dealing with other problems. What other problems? Patricia smiled the way a shark might smile at a wounded seal. Well, for starters, using marital funds to finance an affair is considered theft in some circumstances. And if her law firm finds out she's been conducting personal business on company time, using company resources, Let's just say the legal profession takes ethics violations very seriously. I signed the retainer agreement and left Patricia's office with a plan. But it was only the beginning. My next stop was a storage facility on the outskirts of town. I rented a 10 by 12 unit under my business name and spent the rest of the morning setting it up as what I privately called my war room. I brought in a folding table, 2 chairs, a printer, and a filing cabinet. I made copies of everything Mira had given me and organized it into categories: financial evidence, text messages, voice recordings, hotel receipts, and what I called future ammunition, evidence I might need later. By noon, I had a comprehensive battle plan. Phase 1 would be immediate and devastating. Divorce papers served with full evidence of adultery, financial fraud, and emotional abuse. No warning, no chance for her to prepare a defense or hide assets. Phase 2 would target her professional life. Anonymous tips to her law firm's ethics board. Evidence of her using company time and resources for personal affairs. Documentation of her unprofessional behavior. Phase 3 would be social and personal, letting the right people know exactly what kind of person Zoya really was, using her own words and actions as evidence. Phase 4 would be the coup de grace, something special I was saving for the perfect moment. I was organizing the financial documents when my phone buzzed with a text from Mira. "She's been calling everyone looking for you. Told her parents you had a breakdown and stormed out over nothing, playing the victim hard. Want to know what she's really thinking?" I texted back, "Always." A few minutes later, she sent me a voice message from Zoya recorded that morning. "I can't believe he embarrassed me like that in front of everyone," Zoya's voice said. "Walking out like some dramatic teenager. He's probably sulking at a motel somewhere, waiting for me to come apologize. Well, he can wait. I'm not chasing after him like some desperate housewife." The message continued. "Tony thinks I should just file for divorce first. Get ahead of this. But I know Trent. He doesn't have the spine for a real fight. He'll be back by the weekend, begging me to forgive him for making a scene. Men like him always come crawling back." I saved the message and added it to my evidence file. Zoya was making this easier than I'd expected. At 2 p.m., I drove back to the house. Zoya's car wasn't in the driveway, which meant she was probably at work, spinning the story to anyone who would listen. Perfect. I let myself in through the front door and got to work. First, I changed all the locks. It took me 45 minutes to replace every exterior lock with new deadbolts. I kept one key for myself and gave the spare to Jake Morrison for safekeeping. Next, I called the utility companies and had everything switched to my name only. Electric, gas, water, cable, internet, everything. As the homeowner and primary account holder, it was perfectly legal. Then I went through the house systematically, packing Zoya's belongings into trash bags and cardboard boxes. Clothes, shoes, jewelry, personal items, everything that was clearly hers. I wasn't vindictive about it. I packed carefully and included everything she'd need. But I also did something else. I went through her home office and photographed every document, every piece of mail, every scrap of paper that might be relevant to our divorce. Bank statements, credit card bills, correspondence with Tony, notes about their plans. I documented everything. In her jewelry box, I found a burner phone I'd never seen before. When I turned it on, it was full of messages and photos I definitely wasn't supposed to see. I photographed the screen, then put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. By 5 p.m., I was finished. Zoya's belongings were neatly packed and stacked by the front door. The locks were changed. The utilities were in my name. The house was officially mine again. I was sitting in the kitchen, eating a sandwich and reviewing my checklist, when I heard a car pull into the driveway, then another, then voices outside. Through the window, I saw Zoya's BMW, followed by her parents' Mercedes. Elena and Victor Petrov had arrived for what I assumed would be a family intervention designed to bring their daughter's husband back into line. I heard Zoya's key in the front door lock, followed by confused rattling when it didn't work. Then knocking. "Trent, open this door right now," I took another bite of my sandwich and waited. Trent, I know you're in there. This is ridiculous. More knocking, then the sound of her parents' voices. Victor's deep baritone, Elena's sharp soprano, both speaking in the mixture of English and Russian they used when they were upset. I finished my sandwich, wiped my hands, and walked to the front door. I could see them through the frosted glass panel, 3 figures huddled on my porch like refugees from their own drama. I opened the door. Zoya stood there with her parents flanking her like bodyguards. She was still wearing her work clothes, a sharp black suit that probably cost more than most people made in a week. Her dark hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, despite what had to have been a stressful day. She looked every inch the successful attorney, except for her eyes. Her eyes showed the first hint of real fear. "What is this?" she demanded, gesturing at the bags and boxes stacked beside the door. "Your things," I said calmly. "I thought you might need them." "You changed the locks." "I did." Victor stepped forward, his chest puffed out in the way men do when they're trying to intimidate someone. "Trent, this is unacceptable. You cannot lock my daughter out of her own home." "It's not her home," I replied. "It's my home. I built it, I own it, and my name is the only one on the deed. Zoya has been living here as my guest for 8 years. Now she's not." Elena made a sound like an offended cat. "How dare you speak about our daughter that way? She is your wife." "Actually, she's not. Not anymore." I reached into my back pocket and pulled out a folded document. "Divorce papers were filed this morning. She'll be served officially on Monday, but I thought I'd give her a preview." I handed the papers to Zoya, who took them with hands that shook just slightly. As she read, her face went through a fascinating series of changes. Confusion, then understanding, then something approaching panic. "You can't be serious," she said. "Trent, this is insane. We can work this out. Come on, let's go inside and talk like adults." "We're not going inside. You don't live here anymore." "But my things are right there." I gestured to the bags and boxes. "Everything you need. I was very thorough." Victor was reading over his daughter's shoulder, his face growing redder by the second. "Adultery? Financial fraud? These are serious accusations, Trent. I hope you have evidence to support them." "I do. Lots of it. In fact, your daughter documented most of it herself. Very helpful of her." Zoya looked up from the papers, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely afraid. "What evidence? Trent, you're making a huge mistake. Whatever you think you know. I know about Tony. I know about the hotels. I know about the money you've been spending from our joint account. I know about your plans for after his divorce is final. I know about the condo you picked out in Portland." Each revelation hit her like a physical blow. By the time I finished, she was gripping the divorce papers so tightly her knuckles were white. "I know about everything, Zoya. Every lie, every betrayal, every cruel thing you said about me to your lover. All of it." Elena was looking back and forth between us like a spectator at a tennis match. "Zoya? What is he talking about?" Zoya's mouth opened and closed several times before any sound came out. It's not what it sounds like. Trent is jealous of my friendship with Tony, and he's twisting everything to make it seem. "I have recordings," I said quietly. "Your voice, talking about how pathetic I am. How you're going to take half my business and leave me for Tony. How I'm just your safety net until something better comes along." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the October wind seemed to hold its breath. Victor was the first to speak. "Recordings?" Voice messages she sent to her best friend. Very detailed, very explicit, very incriminating. I looked directly at Zoya. "You made one crucial mistake. You trusted the wrong person." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "Mira, that witch gave me the truth. Finally." Elena stepped forward, her face a mask of maternal outrage. "Even if this is true, even if our daughter made mistakes, marriage is about forgiveness. You made vows, Trent, for better or worse." "I kept my vows," I replied. "Every single one of them. Your daughter decided hers were optional. I stepped back and started to close the door. Wait! Zoya reached out as if to stop me. Trent, please, we need to talk. Really talk. There are things you don't understand. I understand everything. I understand that you planned last night's humiliation to break me down. I understand that you've been stealing from me to finance your affair. I understand that you think I'm too weak to fight back. I looked into her eyes, seeing my own reflection in their green depths. You were wrong. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. Through the frosted glass, I could see their 3 silhouettes standing on the porch. I heard muffled voices, urgent whispers, the sound of Elena crying. After a few minutes, they gathered up the bags and boxes and loaded them into their cars. Zoya knocked on the door one more time, calling my name, but I didn't answer. Eventually, they left. I went back to the kitchen and made myself a cup of coffee. Through the window, I watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and red. It was beautiful, and for the first time in months, I was able to appreciate it without wondering who my wife was texting or where she really was, or what new betrayal was waiting around the corner. My phone buzzed with a text from Mira. How did it go? I texted back, Phase 1 complete, ready for Phase 2. Excellent. I have more intel when you're ready. I'm ready. A few minutes later, she sent me a screenshot of a group chat between Zoya and her law firm colleagues. The messages were from that afternoon, sent while I was changing the locks. Zoya. Having marriage troubles, Trent had some kind of breakdown last night and stormed out. Now he's being dramatic and irrational. Colleague 1. So sorry to hear that. Men can be so emotional. Colleague 2. Are you safe? Do you need somewhere to stay? Zoya. I'm fine. He's just having a tantrum, trying to punish me for having male friends. Very controlling behavior. Colleague 1. That's not healthy. Have you considered counseling? Zoya. I've suggested it, but he refuses. I think he has some deep-seated insecurity issues. Probably needs therapy. I read the messages twice, my anger building with each word. Even in crisis, Zoya was spinning the narrative, making herself the victim and me the villain. But she'd made another mistake. She'd put her lies in writing, sent them to colleagues who would remember them later. When the truth came out, and it would come out very soon, these messages would make her look even worse. I forwarded the screenshots to Patricia Hendricks with a note. More evidence of defamation and character assassination. Please add to the file. Then I settled in to plan Phase 2. By the time I went to bed that night, I had a comprehensive strategy for destroying my wife's professional reputation. It was thorough, methodical, and absolutely devastating. Zoya thought she knew who she was dealing with. She thought I was weak, predictable, easily manipulated. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October clarity that makes you believe anything is possible. I was up at 5 a.m., coffee in hand, reviewing my battle plan for Phase 2. Zoya worked at Petrov, Sterling & Associates, a mid-sized law firm that specialized in corporate law and personal injury cases. Her father had helped her get the job 8 years ago, using his connections in the local Russian community to secure her a position despite her mediocre law school grades. She'd worked her way up to senior associate, handling mostly real estate transactions and contract negotiations. What she didn't know was that I'd done my homework on her firm's policies and procedures. Every law firm in Maine was governed by strict ethical guidelines, and Petrov, Sterling took those guidelines very seriously. They had to. Their reputation depended on it. At 8 a.m., I called the firm's main number and asked to speak with the managing partner, Robert Sterling. His secretary tried to screen the call, but I used the magic words that guaranteed a callback. It's regarding a serious ethical violation by one of your attorneys. Sterling called me back within the hour. Mr. Ardell, I understand you have concerns about one of our staff members. I do, My wife, Zoya Ardell, has been conducting a personal affair using company time and resources. I have documentation proving she's been using the firm's phones and computers to coordinate meetings with her lover, including during billable hours charged to clients. There was a pause. These are serious allegations, Mr. Ardell. Do you have evidence to support them? Extensive evidence. Text messages, voice recordings, financial records, and timestamps showing when these communications occurred during work hours. I'd be happy to provide everything to your ethics committee. Another pause, longer this time. I think we should meet in person. Are you available this afternoon? I'll be there at 2 p.m. I spent the morning preparing a comprehensive presentation of Zoya's misconduct. I printed out every text message that included timestamps during work hours, highlighted every reference to using company phones or computers for personal business, and created a timeline showing exactly when each violation occurred. The evidence was damning. Zoya had been texting Tony during client meetings, making personal calls from her office phone, and even using the firm's letterhead to write a character reference for Tony's divorce proceedings, a clear conflict of interest. At 2 p.m., I walked into the offices of Petrov, Sterling, and Associates, carrying a leather briefcase full of ammunition. The receptionist, a young woman I'd met at several firm holiday parties, looked surprised to see me. Mr. Ardell, how nice to see you. Are you here to see Zoya? Actually, I have a meeting with Mr. Sterling. Her smile faltered slightly. Oh, of course. Let me buzz his office. A few minutes later, I was sitting across from Robert Sterling in his corner office. Sterling was a man in his 60s, silver-haired and distinguished, with the kind of presence that commanded respect in courtrooms and boardrooms alike. He'd built his firm from nothing over 30 years, and his reputation was spotless. Mr. Ardell, I appreciate you coming in. Before we begin, I should mention that Zoya is not in the office today. She called in sick this morning. I wasn't surprised. Zoya was probably holed up at her parents' house, trying to figure out how to spin the situation to her advantage. That's fine. This conversation is about her professional conduct, not her personal situation. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Mr. Sterling, what I'm about to show you represents 8 months of documented ethical violations by your employee. I want to be clear that I'm not doing this out of spite or revenge. I'm doing it because the legal profession deserves better. For the next hour, I walked Sterling through the evidence methodically and professionally. I showed him text messages where Zoya discussed using the firm's phones for personal calls. I played voice recordings where she laughed about billing clients for time she spent coordinating her affair. I presented financial records, showing she'd used the firm's credit card to pay for lunches with Tony, then submitted them as business expenses. Sterling's expression grew darker with each revelation. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and stared at the evidence spread across his desk. This is comprehensive, he said finally, and deeply troubling. If these allegations are proven true, Ms. Ardell has violated virtually every ethical standard we hold dear. They're not allegations, Mr. Sterling. They're documented facts, recorded in her own voice and written in her own words. I understand. Mr. Ardell, I want to thank you for bringing this to my attention. I can assure you that we will investigate these matters thoroughly and take appropriate action. What does that mean exactly? Sterling's expression was grim. It means that if our investigation confirms what you've shown me here today, Zoya's employment with this firm will be terminated immediately. We may also be required to report her conduct to the State Bar Association. And if the Bar Association finds her guilty of ethical violations, she could face suspension or disbarment. Her legal career would effectively be over. I packed the evidence back into my briefcase, leaving copies with Sterling. I appreciate your time, Mr. Sterling. I know this puts you in a difficult position. Actually, Mr. Ardell, you've done us a favor. We cannot afford to have attorneys who abuse their position and violate client trust. Better we find out now than in a malpractice lawsuit later. As I left the firm's offices, I felt a grim satisfaction. Phase 2 was in motion, and there was no way for Zoya to stop it. Even if she tried to claim the evidence was fabricated or taken out of context, the timestamps and voice recordings made her guilt undeniable. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. My next stop was the office of Tony Kozlov's divorce attorney, a woman named Rebecca Martinez, who had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in family court. I'd called ahead and scheduled a meeting under the pretense of potentially hiring her for my own divorce. Martinez was a small woman, with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit. She listened to my story with professional interest until I mentioned Tony's name. Tony Kozlov is involved in this situation? He's the man my wife has been having an affair with. I have evidence of their relationship going back 8 months. Martinez leaned forward, suddenly very interested. What kind of evidence? I showed her selected portions of the text messages and voice recordings, focusing on the ones that revealed Tony's financial situation and his plans for life after divorce. This is fascinating, Martinez said, studying the messages. Mr. Kozlov has been claiming poverty in his divorce proceedings, saying he can't afford the alimony his wife is requesting. But these messages suggest he's been spending significant money on hotels and expensive dinners. He's been lying to his divorce attorney? It appears so, and if he's been hiding assets or income, she smiled the way a predator smiles when it spots wounded prey. Let's just say his ex-wife is going to be very interested in this information. I left Martinez's office knowing that Tony's divorce was about to become much more expensive and complicated. His ex-wife would now have evidence of his affair and his attempts to hide assets. The man who'd been helping to destroy my marriage was about to discover what real consequences felt like. That evening, I returned to my war room at the storage facility to plan Phase 3. I was organizing my files when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Zoya's number. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, she called again. And again. By the time she gave up, I had 7 missed calls and 3 voicemails. I listened to the messages on speaker, taking notes as her tone evolved from angry to desperate to pleading. Message 1. Trent, this is ridiculous. You can't just lock me out of my own home and refuse to talk to me. We're adults. We can work this out. Call me back. Message 2. Trent, I know you're angry, but you're making a huge mistake. Whatever lies people have been telling you about me, they're not true. You know me better than anyone. You know I would never betray you. Please call me back so we can talk about this rationally. Message 3. Trent, please. I'm begging you. I don't know what's happening or why you're doing this, but I love you. I've always loved you. Whatever problems we have, we can fix them. Please don't throw away 8 years of marriage over a misunderstanding. Please call me. I saved all 3 messages and added them to my evidence file. Even in crisis, Zoya was lying, claiming she'd never betrayed me and calling the documented evidence of her affair a misunderstanding. But there was something else in her voice, something I'd never heard before. Genuine fear. For the first time in our relationship, Zoya was realizing that she wasn't in control of the situation. My phone buzzed with a text from Mira. Heard from our mutual friend today. She's panicking, wants to meet tomorrow to strategize. Should I go? I texted back, absolutely, record everything. The next morning brought news that exceeded my wildest expectations. Mira called me at 7 a.m., barely able to contain her excitement. You're not going to believe what happened, she said. Zoya called me at 6 this morning, crying hysterically. She's been suspended from work pending an ethics investigation. Already? Sterling didn't waste any time. They called her at home yesterday evening and told her not to come in until further notice. She's completely losing it, Trent. She keeps saying someone is trying to destroy her, that there's a conspiracy against her. What else did she say? She wants to meet me for lunch today. She thinks you hired a private investigator to spy on her, and she wants my help figuring out who it is. She has no idea I'm the one who gave you everything. Are you comfortable maintaining the deception? Are you kidding? I've been waiting years for someone to hold Zoya accountable for her behavior. This is the most fun I've had since college. We arranged for Mira to wear a wire to lunch, a simple recording app on her phone that would capture everything Zoya said. I wanted a complete record of my wife's mental state and her plans for fighting back. While Mira prepared for her spy mission, I focused on Phase 3, social consequences. Zoya had spent years building a carefully crafted image as the successful, sophisticated attorney married to the simple construction worker. She'd positioned herself as the prize in our relationship, the one who'd married beneath her station out of love. It was time to shatter that image completely. I started with social media. Using a fake account I'd created specifically for this purpose, I began commenting on Zoya's professional and personal posts with carefully worded questions that would make her friends and colleagues think. On a post about her latest legal victory. Congratulations! How do you balance such demanding work with your personal life? On a photo from a recent charity event. Beautiful picture. Was your husband there too, or was he working that night? On a professional article she'd shared. Great insights. Do you think personal ethics are as important as professional ethics in the legal field? Each comment was innocent on its surface, but designed to plant seeds of doubt in the minds of people who knew us. I wanted them to start asking questions about our marriage, about Zoya's behavior, about the things they might have overlooked. I also reached out to 3 key people in our social circle. Neighbors who'd witnessed Zoya's public humiliation of me at the dinner party, colleagues from my construction business who'd heard her make dismissive comments about my work, and members of our country club who'd seen her flirting with Tony at various events. I didn't tell them about the affair directly. Instead, I simply mentioned that Zoya and I were separating, and that they might hear some disturbing things about the reasons why. I suggested they draw their own conclusions based on what they'd observed over the years. The beauty of this approach was that it felt organic. People began remembering incidents they'd previously ignored or rationalized. Conversations where Zoya had been dismissive of me. Events where she'd paid more attention to Tony than to her own husband. Moments when her mask had slipped and they'd glimpsed the cruelty underneath. By noon, the whisper campaign was in full effect. My phone was buzzing with calls and texts from people who'd heard something and wanted to know if I was okay. I answered selectively, confirming that yes, we were getting divorced, and yes, there were some very serious issues involved, but no, I couldn't discuss the details while the legal proceedings were ongoing. Each conversation ended the same way. I'm sure the truth will come out eventually. It always does. At 2 p.m., Mira texted me. Lunch is over. Holy cow, do I have material for you? Can you meet at the usual place in an hour? I drove to our Dunkin' Donuts rendezvous point with anticipation building in my chest. When I arrived, Mira was already there, her laptop open and a transcript of the conversation displayed on the screen. She's completely unhinged, Mira said without preamble. Listen to this. She played the audio from lunch, and I listened to my wife's voice, revealing more than she'd ever intended. Someone is trying to destroy me, Mira. This isn't random. Someone has been planning this for months, collecting evidence, building a case against me. It's too coordinated to be a coincidence. Who would do something like that? Mira's voice, perfectly innocent. I don't know, but they have access to everything. My texts, my calls, my financial records. They know about Tony, about our plans, about things I never told anyone except... A long pause. Except who, Zoya? Except you. Oh my God, Mira. You're the only person I trusted with everything. You're the only one who could have... Another pause. Then Mira's voice, carefully controlled. Are you accusing me of betraying you? No, of course not. I'm sorry. I'm just so confused and scared. I don't know who to trust anymore. The recording continued for another 20 minutes, with Zoya revealing her complete ignorance of how the evidence had been gathered and her desperate need to find someone to blame. She'd suspected everyone from private investigators to vengeful clients, to Tony's ex-wife. But she'd never considered that her best friend might be her worst enemy. "This is perfect," I told Mira. "She's paranoid, isolated, and making accusations against everyone around her. She's destroying her remaining relationships all by herself." "It gets better," Mira said. "She asked me to lie for her. She wants me to call Sterling and tell him that you've been stalking her, that you're mentally unstable, that the evidence was obtained illegally." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her I'd think about it. But Trent, she's getting desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. You need to be careful." "What kind of stupid things?" "She mentioned hiring her own private investigator to dig up dirt on you. She also talked about claiming you were abusive, that she was afraid for her safety. She's looking for any angle that might make her look like the victim instead of the perpetrator." I nodded, making mental notes. "Let her try. I've been documenting everything, and I have witnesses to my behavior throughout this entire process. If she wants to escalate, I'm ready." "There's one more thing," Mira said. "She's planning to go to your job site tomorrow. She wants to confront you publicly, make a scene, try to embarrass you in front of your employees." "What time?" "Around lunch. She thinks catching you at work will give her some kind of advantage." I smiled for the first time in days. "Actually, that's perfect. I've been wondering how to implement Phase 4. She just handed me the perfect opportunity." "What's Phase 4? "The coup de grace, the final devastating blow that ends this once and for all." I closed my laptop and gathered my papers. "Mira, I need you to do something for me, something that might be uncomfortable." "What?" "I need you to call Zoya tonight and encourage her to go through with confronting me at the job site. Tell her you think it's a great idea, that she needs to take control of the narrative, that a public confrontation will make me look like the bad guy." "You want her to make a scene?" "I want her to make the biggest scene of her life, because when she does, I'm going to be ready with cameras rolling and witnesses watching. And when it's over, everyone in this town will know exactly who Zoya Ardell really is." Mira grinned. "You're diabolical. I love it." "One more thing. After tomorrow, your part in this is over. I don't want you getting caught in the crossfire when everything explodes." "Are you sure? I'm having the time of my life watching her self-destruct." "I'm sure. You've done more than enough, and I'll never forget it. But what happens next is going to be ugly, and I don't want her to have any reason to come after you." We shook hands like business partners closing a deal. In a way, that's exactly what we were. I drove home that evening with a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt since my military days. Tomorrow would be the climax of everything I'd been building toward. Tomorrow, Zoya would finally face the full consequences of her choices, and I would be ready. Wednesday morning dawned gray and cold, with the kind of October wind that cuts through your jacket and reminds you that winter is coming whether you're ready or not. I was up at 5 a.m., running through my final preparations for what I privately called the Zoya show. My current project was a custom home for the Hendersons, a retired couple who'd hired me to build their dream house on a lot overlooking Penobscot Bay. It was the kind of job that attracted attention, expensive, visible, and crawling with subcontractors who loved to gossip. Perfect for what I had planned. I arrived at the job site at 6 a.m. and briefed my foreman, Jake Morrison, on what to expect. "We're going to have a visitor today around lunchtime," I told him. "My wife. She's going to make a scene, probably accuse me of various things, try to embarrass me in front of the crew." Jake, a grizzled veteran of construction drama, just nodded. "You want us to clear out?" "Actually, no. I want everyone to stay and watch, but I need you to do something for me first." I handed him a small digital camera. "Set this up somewhere inconspicuous with a clear view of the main work area. Make sure it's recording when she arrives." "You expecting trouble?" "I'm expecting theater, and I want it documented." I spent the morning making sure everything was perfect. The job site was clean and organized, My crew was briefed on their roles, and I had backup cameras positioned at 3 different angles. If Zoya wanted to perform for an audience, I was going to give her the production values she deserved. At 11 a.m., I got a text from Mira. "She's on her way, dressed to impress and ready for battle. Good luck." At 11:47 a.m., Zoya's black BMW pulled into the gravel lot beside our work trailers. She sat in the car for almost 5 minutes, probably working up her courage or rehearsing her lines. When she finally emerged, she looked like she was heading to court rather than a construction site. She was wearing a charcoal gray power suit that probably cost more than most of my crew made in a week, 4-inch heels that were completely impractical for walking on rough ground, and enough jewelry to finance a small country. Her hair was perfect, her makeup was flawless, and her expression was set in the kind of determined mask that meant she was about to do something she'd regret. I was standing near the foundation, reviewing blueprints with Jake, when she approached. The entire crew, 12 men who'd been working for me for years, stopped what they were doing to watch. "Trent." Her voice carried across the job site like a gunshot. I looked up from the blueprints as if I was surprised to see her. "Zoya, what are you doing here?" She walked closer, her heels clicking against the concrete like a countdown timer. "We need to talk. I'm working, and I believe my attorney advised you to communicate through legal channels only. This is important. It can't wait." I set down the blueprints and gave her my full attention. Around us, hammers had stopped hammering, saws had stopped sawing, and 12 construction workers were pretending to work while actually listening to every word. "What's so important that it couldn't wait until after work?" Zoya glanced around at the watching faces, clearly aware that she had an audience. For a moment, I thought she might back down, but then her chin came up, and I saw the familiar glint in her eyes that meant she was about to go for the throat. "I know what you're doing," she said, her voice pitched to Carrie. "I know about your little campaign to destroy my reputation. The lies you've been spreading, the evidence you've been fabricating, the people you've been manipulating." I kept my expression neutral. "I'm not sure what you're talking about." "Don't play innocent with me, Trent. You hired someone to spy on me, didn't you? Some sleazy private investigator who's been following me around, taking pictures, recording conversations." "Actually, no. I didn't hire anyone." "Then how do you explain all the so-called evidence against me? The text messages, the voice recordings, the financial records. Someone has been building a case against me for months." I could see Jake trying to hide a grin behind his clipboard. The rest of the crew was watching like spectators at a tennis match. "Maybe," I said carefully, "the evidence exists because you actually did the things you're accused of." Zoya's face flushed red. "I never cheated on you. Whatever lies Tony has been telling, whatever stories people have been making up, they're not true." "So you're saying Tony is lying?" "I'm saying that our relationship is purely professional. He's been helping me with some legal matters, and you've twisted that into something dirty because you're jealous and insecure." I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. "That's interesting, because I have recordings of you describing your relationship with Tony in very different terms. Those recordings are fake, or taken out of context, or obtained illegally. Actually, they're real in context and completely legal. Want to hear one?" I tapped play on one of the voice messages Zoya had sent to Mira, the one where she described me as pathetic and laughed about how naive I was. Her own voice filled the job site, crystal clear and unmistakably hers. "He's trying so hard to be romantic. It's almost sad, like watching a dog perform tricks for treats he's never going to get." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Zoya stared at me with something approaching horror. "Where did you get that?" "From someone who got tired of being your accomplice. Mira." The name came out like a curse. "That witch recorded me without permission. That's illegal." "Actually, it's not. Maine is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's perfectly legal." I could see her mind racing, trying to find an angle, a way to spin this disaster in her favor. "Even if that's true," she said, her voice rising, "it doesn't change the fact that you're trying to destroy me. You've turned my best friend against me. You've sabotaged my career. You've poisoned everyone in this town with your lies." "I haven't told anyone any lies, Zoya. I've simply shared the truth. Your truth, in your own words." "You're a vindictive, pathetic little man," she screamed, finally losing all control. "You can't stand the fact that I'm successful, that I'm educated, that I'm better than you, so you're trying to tear me down to your level." The construction workers were no longer pretending to work. They were openly staring now, their faces showing a mixture of shock and disgust at her words. "You think you've won?" Zoya continued, her voice echoing off the half-built walls. "You think you've destroyed me? Well, congratulations, Trent. You've managed to ruin the best thing that ever happened to you. And for what? Your wounded pride, your fragile ego." I let her rant, knowing that every word was being recorded from multiple angles. When she finally ran out of steam, I spoke quietly. "Are you finished?" "No, I'm not finished. I want everyone here to know what kind of man you really are. You're weak, you're controlling, you're emotionally abusive, and you're so insecure that you can't handle your wife having male friends." "Male friends?" I pulled out my phone again. "Is that what you call Tony?" I played another recording, this one from just 2 weeks ago. Zoya's voice describing in explicit detail what she and Tony had done in their hotel room the previous afternoon. The effect was immediate and devastating. Several of the construction workers actually stepped back, as if they didn't want to be associated with what they were hearing. Jake's face went from amused to disgusted. Even the concrete mixer seemed to run quieter. When the recording ended, Zoya looked around at the faces surrounding her and seemed to realize for the first time how completely she'd destroyed herself. "You," she started, then stopped. "This isn't over, Trent. I'll fight you in court. I'll take everything you have. I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are." "What I really am," I said, "is a man who kept his wedding vows, who worked 60-hour weeks to build a life for his wife, who trusted the wrong person and paid the price for it." I gestured at the house rising around us. "What you really are is a woman who threw away 8 years of marriage for a few hotel afternoons with a man who's already moved on to someone else." "What do you mean, moved on?" "Tony's divorce was finalized yesterday. His ex-wife got everything, including evidence of his affair with you. Apparently, he decided you weren't worth the cost and found himself a younger, richer replacement." The color drained from Zoya's face. "That's not true." "Call him. Ask him about his new girlfriend, the pharmaceutical heiress he met at his country club. Ask him if he's still planning to move to Portland with you." I could see the moment when the last of her delusions crumbled. Her shoulders sagged, her perfect posture collapsed, and for the first time since I'd known her, Zoya looked genuinely broken. "You've destroyed everything," she whispered. "No," I replied. "You destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone could see it." She turned and walked back toward her car, her heels unsteady on the rough ground. Halfway there, she turned back. "You said I'd come crawling back," she called out, her voice cracking. "You were wrong. I'll never come back to you. Never." I watched her struggle with the car door, her hands shaking too badly to get a good grip on the handle. Finally, she managed to get inside and start the engine. As she drove away, spinning gravel and nearly hitting a concrete barrier in her haste to escape, Jake walked over to stand beside me. "Boss," he said quietly, "that was the most brutal thing I've ever witnessed, and I was in Iraq for 2 tours. She chose this," I replied. "Every bit of it. I just gave her the stage she wanted." The rest of the crew gradually returned to work, but I could hear them talking in low voices, processing what they'd witnessed. By evening, the story would be all over town. By tomorrow, Everyone would know exactly what had happened to the Ardell marriage. I was packing up my tools when my phone rang. Patricia Hendricks, my divorce attorney. Trent, I just got a very interesting call from opposing counsel. Apparently, your wife wants to settle immediately. No contest, no demands. She just wants out as quickly as possible. What changed her mind? I'm not sure, but she seems to be in quite a hurry. She's also agreed to waive any claim to alimony or property division beyond her personal belongings. It's like she just wants to disappear. I thought about Zoya's face when I'd told her about Tony's new girlfriend, the moment when she'd realized that everything she'd sacrificed her marriage for had been worthless. How quickly can we finalize it? With her cooperation? 2 weeks? Maybe less. Do it. That evening, I returned to my house. My house, not our house, and opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. I sat on the deck I'd built with my own hands, looking out over the land I'd bought with money I'd earned through honest work, and thought about the future. My phone buzzed with a text from Mira. Saw the video. Holy cow, Trent. You didn't just win. You obliterated her. How does it feel? I thought about her question as I sipped my wine and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. How did it feel? It felt like justice. It felt like closure. It felt like the end of 8 years of being underestimated, manipulated, and taken for granted. But mostly, it felt like freedom. I texted back, "It feels like the beginning of the rest of my life." 2 weeks later, the divorce was final. Zoya had left town the day after our confrontation at the job site, reportedly moving to Boston where she had distant relatives. Her law firm had terminated her employment, and the State Bar Association was conducting its own investigation into her conduct. Tony Kozlov had indeed moved on to a pharmaceutical heiress, just as I'd told Zoya. His ex-wife had taken him for everything he was worth, leaving him desperate enough to chase any woman with money. Zoya had simply been a stepping stone to someone more valuable. The house was quiet now, but it was a peaceful quiet rather than the tense silence that had characterized the final months of my marriage. I'd removed all traces of Zoya from the rooms, repainting walls and rearranging furniture until the space felt like mine again. On a cold Thursday morning in November, I was reviewing blueprints for a new project when my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Elena Petrov standing on my porch, looking older and more fragile than I remembered. "Trent," she said quietly. "May I come in?" I stepped aside and let her enter. She looked around the house with sad eyes, probably remembering happier times when she'd visited with her daughter. "I came to apologize," she said without preamble. "For my daughter, for myself, for the things we said to you." "You don't need to apologize, Elena. You were defending your daughter. I understand that." "No, you don't understand. We knew, Trent. Victor and I, we knew what she was doing. We saw the signs, heard the rumors, suspected the truth. But we chose to ignore it because it was easier than confronting her." She sat down heavily in the chair that had once been Zoya's favorite spot. "We raised her to believe she was special, that rules didn't apply to her, that she deserved whatever she wanted regardless of who got hurt. We created the monster that destroyed your marriage." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. "She called us last week," Elena continued. "From Boston. She's working as a paralegal now. No law firm will hire her as an attorney. She lives in a studio apartment and takes the bus to work. She wanted money." "Did you give it to her?" "No. For the first time in her life, we told her no. We told her that she'd made her choices and now she had to live with the consequences." Elena looked up at me with eyes that held decades of regret. "She asked about you. Wanted to know if you'd taken her back, if you'd forgiven her, if there was any chance of reconciliation." "What did you tell her?" "I told her the truth, that you'd moved on, that you were better off without her, that some mistakes can't be undone." She stood to leave, then turned back one final time. "For what it's worth, Trent, I'm proud of you." You showed more strength and dignity in those final weeks than my daughter showed in 36 years. You deserved better than what she gave you. After she left, I sat in my kitchen and thought about Zoya in her Boston studio apartment, taking the bus to a job that paid a fraction of what she'd been earning, living with the knowledge that she'd thrown away everything good in her life for a man who'd discarded her the moment she became inconvenient. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, no joy in her suffering, but I felt no regret either. She'd made her choices with full knowledge of the consequences. She'd gambled everything on a man who saw her as disposable, and she'd lost. The last I heard of Zoya Ardell came 6 months later, in a brief news item in the Portland paper. She'd been arrested for embezzling money from the law firm where she worked as a paralegal. Apparently, old habits die hard. As for me, I kept building houses. Good houses, solid houses, houses that would stand for generations. I dated occasionally, but wasn't in any hurry to remarry. I'd learned the value of solitude, of peace, of knowing that the person you go to bed with at night is the same person you wake up with in the morning. Sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet and the wind was blowing off the bay, I thought about that dinner party where it all began. About Zoya's confident smirk when she'd delivered her ultimatum. About her absolute certainty that I would come crawling back. She'd been wrong about that, just as she'd been wrong about so many things. I never did come crawling back. But she'd been right about one thing. It had only taken a few weeks to discover the truth about who she really was, a few weeks to document her betrayal completely, a few weeks to destroy the life she'd built on lies and manipulation, a few weeks to show her what real consequences looked like. In the end, Zoya had gotten exactly what she'd asked for that night at the dinner party. She'd wanted me to leave, and I had. She'd wanted to test my strength, and she'd discovered it was greater than she'd imagined. She'd wanted to play games with a man she thought was weak. She'd been wrong about that too.